explain what happened there? Because a lot of people forget why he ended up in Russia, that he traveled to Russia because he wanted to sell the Russian secrets, or that he sold the Chinese secrets. Explain how he ends up being stuck in Russia.
Well, first of all, it's just such a potent sign of how disingenuous our political discourse can be, because when he was in Hong Kong for those first 2.5 weeks, all sorts of people were asserting, obviously without evidence, that he must be a Chinese spy. This was clearly a Chinese espionage operation. And the minute he moved from Hong Kong to Moscow, those same people just switched seamlessly from he's a Chinese spy to a Russian spy and forgot or ignored the fact that they were claiming something quite different just a moment ago. Any whistleblower in the United States who's effective is going to be aggressively demonized. But what people have blocked out and what the media has successfully obscured, because it's the media that typically tries to attack Snowden by saying, oh, look, he's in this oppressive tyranny and it's hypocritical that he would be in Russia while criticizing the United States, is that he did not choose to be in Russia. He went to Moscow with the intention of flying on to Havana, which had promised him safe passage, so that he could then fly to the northern part of Latin America, where he would request asylum. And it was only because on the flight from Hong Kong to Moscow, when the U.S. government, with no due process, unilaterally just revoked his passport, declared it invalid, and then bullied and threatened the Cubans out of rescinding their offer of safe passage, and he landed and realized he no longer had safe passage, did they force him to remain in Russia? And he stayed there for 5 weeks. I mean, as he always says, if I were a Russian spy, do you think I would have been given that welcome of being forced to remain in the airport for 5 weeks while the Russian government thought about what they wanted to do with me? And he only then, once he realized that he would be physically incapable of leaving Russia. Remember, during this time, the U.S. government showed how radical it would be. There was a plane that they thought that he was on that was actually the plane of Bolivian President Evo Morales. And despite no evidence that he was on the plane, they literally forced the plane down by preventing overflight rights from several of their allies in Europe, and he was forced to land in Austria. The fact that they were willing to force down the plane of a president of a sovereign country based on a whim showed that they were physically going to force him to stay in Russia, not let him leave. And it was only then that he sought asylum. So then to try and use that against him and say, well, he's in Russia, and that undermines his credibility as a messenger, is the ultimate in irony.